is when changes occur on the inside.
I'd like to use as a reference point, though, the Mayan calendar and the Mayan prophecy. And in the Mayan prophecy and the calendar, we have 13 heavens, which, of course, are controlled by the 13 lords of light. And each one of those heavens lasts 52 years. If you take the 13 heavens and multiply that by 52, you end up with 676 years of ruling by the lords of light. Shortly after they cease, then, of course, in comes the lords of darkness, and each one of those two are 52 years duration, but there are only 9 of them as opposed to the 13 lords of light. So we can see that light still prevails. Nevertheless, they were very necessary to stimulate growth within the human race and here upon the planet. And each one of these lords of darkness played a personified and you might say, a strict application for the growth of mankind. Now, if you go back in history, and if you were to trace it back 468 years, and of course take each one of the 52 increments of the 468 years, you will find out that something great and stupendous happened during that time. Now, the last great Lord of Darkness was none other than one we knew as Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was a divine instrument. Adolf Hitler played his role well. He wore the dark hat as opposed to the white hat. If we were to relate this to the Indians, and I've worked with the Indians for 22 years, they have a very simplified understanding of these things. For instance, they have a Lord of Light called, for instance, Quetzalcoatl. And then they have a Lord of Darkness called Pakal. Now, in their mythology and in their understanding of the Lords of Light and Lords of Darkness, these two are brothers. They are twins, in fact. And they love one another very much. But they play separate roles. As the Lord of Light, Quetzalcoatl, ends his reign, of course, he turns to his brother and he says, well, now I've taught them all I can. I want you to go in there and test them and see how well they've learned what I have taught them. Well, in comes the Lord of Darkness, and in this case, we're talking about Hitler, to see how well we had learned in the past from the Lords of Light. As we know, Hitler was a metaphysician supreme. As he was a boy, he studied studiously for many, many years what we know today as esoteric or metaphysical things. He also, in addition to the many understandings he had of Vril and many other powers which were, of course, used by the ancients, he had a morbid fascination with the spear of destiny. And that was, of course, the Longinus spear that pierced the side of Christ. Hitler knew that anybody, whether it be the Lords of Darkness or the Lords of Light, should they have that spear, they were almost certain to win the war. Now, he wanted that spear for so long, and there was one in a man by the name of Rudolf Steiner, who lived here in Germany also, and he and Hitler both had a morbid fascination for that spear of destiny. Later, we know that Rudolf had to flee for his life because Hitler felt that he would get the spear and he wouldn't have it. So when we talk about Hitler, we're talking about, in my understanding, a divine being. I can remember 3 years ago in Frankfurt when I said before a large audience that Hitler was a divine being, when, of course, I thought they were going to stone me. But I let that sink in, and finally I said he was the last Lord of Darkness. And after I had explained it to them, then, of course, they accepted it.
Therefore, every exterior revolution is already doomed in advance, because the masters of revolution themselves will later become the dictators of this world. The worst that can happen is the rule of a spiritual leader who is striving to gain world power, but who only understands half the truth and has not yet surrendered his ego to divine guidance. At that moment, an occult superego will be born, where only one individual visualizes him or herself as God superior, and all others are again inferior beings. The occult war, which started with Atlantis, reached its climax during the Second World War. The New Templar Order saw the Illuminati and the Freemasons as the Antichrist, whereas the Illuminati and Freemason orders perceived the New Templar Order and the Nazis as the Antichrist. Today it should be clear to everyone that God is inside of every person. However, to perceive ourselves as being the chosen ones, be it because of a religion, a race, nationality, or color of skin, inevitably means the beginnings of a human tragedy. God's people are not to be recognized by their color of skin, by their race, or by their outside appearance, but by the virtues of love, wisdom, and power, which they have inwardly united. All races came once from the stars and are God's people because they all carry the seed of God in themselves. The animal human, by conquering his animal features through thousands of lives, has developed into the real human being.
Were there any contacts between the Third Reich and extraterrestrial races? My very long research into the terrestrial secret societies has proven to me that basically almost all the secret societies on the planet were established in the first place to be the low-key, low-profile interfaces between extraterrestrial races or intelligence races with even higher level and our civilization. In my research, we've discovered that the Germans were in contact with at least a dozen alien races, all of them loosely grouped under one philosophical, political, religious program. And not only that, but that actually this grouping of extraterrestrial races were in their turn subcontracting for even higher levels of, let's call them celestial management structures. But we have discovered witnesses, a lady in Australia that worked shoulder to shoulder with extremely beautiful looking extraterrestrials in an underground base in Germany. She was a British spy, a Commonwealth spy in this underground base, and she has told us incredible stories about the close cooperation of the highest echelons of the German secret societies with extraterrestrials.